Hey, church fam. So this week we read through and we talked through Acts 11, 19 to 30. And one of the main themes of that message in that chapter is the idea of suffering. And we learned that we have a lot of sources for comfort in the midst of our suffering. The first one was that God is sovereign. This truth is comforting to us because we know that He has good plans in the midst of our suffering. And we saw this with the story of Joseph, as well as what was going on with the early church and how lives were being saved, as well as with the story of Job. And Job helped us to transition into the second source of comfort, which was that our suffering sanctifies us and grows us and helps us to become more like Christ. And we saw that this is what Barnabas was seeing in the early church and how they were being incredibly sanctified. And what Barnabas was doing is he was encouraging and comforting the early church. So the elders was source number 3 for helping us in the midst of our suffering. And they can be a great comfort to us in the midst of our suffering. But point number 4 was that it can't just be up to the elders. We too must take the responsibility of comforting one another. And the one who helps us to do that, who enables us to comfort one another, is God. And God actually, it says in 2 Corinthians that God comforts us so that we can comfort others. So God was the 5th source of comfort in the midst of our suffering. And it's through His Word and through His Spirit that guide us through this life and help us as we struggle through different trials and tribulations. And the 6th point was that one day this suffering will end, and that's something that we can celebrate. But that's only true for us who are in Christ. The reality is suffering only amplifies for those who are not in Christ, and so it should produce an urgency within us to preach the gospel to people. And that was the main point. That was the final point. Point number 7 was the gospel. The gospel is the greatest source of comfort because we know that we have been redeemed by Christ and by the blood of Christ. And that when we think about our suffering, we can always look to Jesus and always look to the cross, because that is always the greatest source of hope and comfort, because Jesus is perfectly capable. He is perfect in being able to empathize with us because He endured far more suffering than we ever could. So as you go about this week and as you discuss in your groups, I hope that you find encouragement and think about the ways in which you have suffered, and that you would just enjoy your time together and learn about the Word and how you can be better plugged into your community and better reading your Word so you can be better comforted.